A beautiful day. Let the intro song play for a minute here. I'm still getting coffee together like usual. Gonna pack me a bong load to start the conversation here, and let's go ahead and that's me. Morning. Old Smoke's with us in the house. Today we're talking about tobacco. Let's see, I need that. There we go. Sacred plants and how they can be turned into a poison, and then how we can use them to heal again. Big cycles, circles. Everything in life is a big circle, a pattern, a flow, a spectrum, right? Black and white are the same thing. There's no separation. One is the absence, one is the presence of light. Okay, but where's gray on that scale? There's the in-between, and there's the extremes. There's the day-to-day, and there's eternity. In the beginning, tobacco itself was one of the very first sacred medicine plants. It's the plant that taught the medicine men and the seekers and the knowers and the teachers about all the rest of the plants and how we interact in this garden we call Earth. Hey, folks in chat, you guys hearing me there? Okay. I appreciate if you let me know. I never know if I'm actually streaming here when this is happening. So let's see. I'm going to this is a little bit of Dr. Dreamaholic here, and we'll burn that. We'll burn a little bit else here, and some sacred plants to get the prayers and the meditation and the thought process proper. I want you to make sure that you understand what it is I'm saying. My thoughts come clearly into my words and into your understanding that you can have a better life for yourself and your family, and blessings amongst everyone around you. Thanks, Fishtoff. I got a new game. Kind of like a drinking game, but a smoking game, or whatever it is you want to do. Whenever you hear me say right, take a dab, take a bong, take a puff, whatever. Right. I say it too much. Anyhow, let's see. I'm going to take a bigger picture, and I'll come back to my own reality, and then I'll give the teaching of the lesson of how to cure. So let's look at corn, maize. Blue corn woman. Blue corn woman is a sacred entity. She's a goddess. Okay. Corn manufacturing in the United States also has created a dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico. Okay. The fertilizers and pesticides and the runoff that goes into the Mississippi River and out into the ocean literally created a dead zone from what once was a sacred plant. We have today in America severe diabetes issues, primarily from corn syrup. All right, mass production, taking a sacred plant and the thing that was the sustenance of life for all of the peoples of the Americas, the New World, so to speak, and the greed of the manifest destiny and the expansion mindset, the must have more, the I am better than the rest, so I'm going to go ahead and pollute the world because I want profits mindset. Whether that's actually what it is, but that's what it's manifested as. Okay, I don't think people who actually go out and do this stuff think those things, but they don't think that the things they do are these things. So that's part of the paradigm shift concept, is to get people to really think about everything you do. You know, in forestry, everything we do in the woods, you have to expect it's going to be there for 100 years, right? And so the same thing with whatever it is that we do in the day-to-day life. Our butterfly effect, the flap of the wing of the butterfly causing the hurricane in the Philippines, you know, the Amazon. So the cause and effect, nothing is random. Everything has cause and effect. That's part of the spectrum of reality. Nothing occurs magically. Nothing occurs. Everything has a true cause and effect. All right. And so we took these plants and we wanted to more and more and bigger and bigger and better and better. And we've made what's the thang? Isn't it the thang from I'm sorry, mind blank. I see the picture of the little short guy that I use as an avatar with the big mustache and brain fart in the name of the Lorax. So yeah, that's just the nature sometimes is we want to create and make better, but we don't realize that by doing that we can be destroying at the same time, because everything you take and create, you've got to destroy something else. That's the nature of the phoenix. All right, so with corn, right, they bred it into this thing that was mass produced, and then we ended up getting petroleum distillate fertilizers and petroleum distillate pesticides and chemicals, and we really didn't know, but we kept on thinking we're doing a good thing by feeding the country, right, and producing bigger yields and bigger yields. I wish I could get the light to stay right where it was. There. Anyhow, and that's a good thing because prosperity and people were getting, but they have no idea they're in the long run. All of a sudden, we've created all these other things that corn wasn't supposed to be, like corn syrup and corn-fed hogs. I love bacon, but is it really a good thing for us to be eating bacon all the time or meat at all? Again, the long-term residual buildup of the effects, right? And so the sacred plant, blue corn woman, became one of the greatest poisons that kills Americans with diabetes and obesity. And we have dead zones in the ocean where nothing can live. Okay. I love sweet corn. I love corn tortillas, right? There is this great dichotomy in the reality which we exist as to whether this is truly a good thing or a bad thing, or what is evil and what is good. And they're just antagonistic viewpoints of existence, right? Because the farmer and his family deserve to have a good income as well. That touches into the central bank issue of there is no such thing as a free market. But that's an aside to point from. Well, no, it isn't, because how did tobacco become so, and how does corn become so impregnated upon us? And this is kind of weird. This is just a thought that came to me as I'm streaming here in this, and I've always had major issues with central bank and the corporatism that derives from it, and we become these corporate serfs, right? Corporate feudalism. And this perhaps really truly is the way that this sacred plants become these poisons upon us, is through the central bank and deriving profits from losses. And you have to participate in this system to be able to get the subsidies to match the ability of profit, right? And then it's kind of weird because, like, supposedly this is a Christian nation we live in here in the United States, by so-called Christian folks, that we know it's a secular nation. And if you really understand the founding fathers, they were more occult and Masons than they were any denomination of Christianity. But that does not preclude there being a supreme one, monotheist, whatever. That's anyhow. So back to the central bank here, you have to take loans, and taking a loan is usury. Okay, and that's a sin against Christians. If you understand what being a Christian truly is you've been made a slave under another person to have prosperity. Okay, I don't know how, that's the simplest way I can put what usury is you've agreed to enslave yourself to profit another person with your own labor. Some people say that's okay, some people say that's not, but again, usury and if you are a Christian is a sin, and I don't think it's proper from a whole bunch of other standpoints either, but that's just one way we can all relate here in this conversation. And so we're forced into this immoral position to exist and move forward. And so that it's kind of weird here how, if we really look at that aspect of taking the sacred plants, tobacco again, the only way you could profit from it is the tobacco grower was under the subsidies. And then the government said that you were only allowed to grow tobacco. You can't grow tobacco at home. All right. Think about these crazy fucking thoughts I'm coming out here on. Shit. Someone delete the freaking, I can't get to that here. We have spamifiers trying to steal your identity in the chat. Someone, if we have any wrenches, I don't know. Okay, so both tobacco and corn here in the United States, you need to have a government subsidy and loans through the central bank to make a living on. That's kind of crazy. So you have to bigger and bigger and bigger it the whole time too to make enough, because you're moving against these the market, the supply and demand, and then they found out that they could sell it to us. Well, so like corn syrup is cheaper than sugar, and then here's some crazy stuff. So that there's a whole nother lineage on sugar and slavery, right? And sugar is an addiction. It's a drug. It's not a freaking food, right? And it's in everything we eat. It's horrible. My teeth are rotting right now, and I always thought I took good care of my shit. All right, and I don't have the money to fix it, and that's a whole nother racket, is dentistry. But yeah, I can't delete that stuff, man. I don't know if we have any wrenches that come up and get up in the morning and watch me. Train of thought. I got bots here messing my thought here. So to survive on a farm and those particular commodities, again, we have these corporations that end up having, you're fighting corporate forms. You're dealing with a corporation that has the pole position on purchase. Okay, it's all that stuff becomes control and takes the sacred plants away from. So another sacred plant that is like a whole nother. Scourge on people is the coca plant. We don't have that commercially produced in the United States, but our government did have this really bizarre thing where we paid to purge it, but we also imported it. And for instance, if you don't know, I grew up in a war zone. It sounds kind of weird, but when you analyze the activity and statistics that occurred in Southern California and the areas I went to school and grew up in, for instance, had to travel through. We were in warlord warfare, tribal gang warfare, but there was a higher collateral damage rate in the time I was in high school and the areas I was existing and living and spending my time than there was in both the combined conflicts of Israel and Ireland at the same time period in the 80s. And it's like drive-by shootings, 12 people would get killed and trying to shoot one person because they incurred on a coke deal or whatever it was, right? In the high school I went to, we'd have shootouts and whatever. This is cocaine, but it's also a sacred plant that when used appropriately and you just chew on the leaf is like a food, right? Sugarcane, okay, you chew on the plant, it's kind of like a food. But when you compress it and extract it and you use slave labor to do all of this plantation style production and shipping it off around the world and you know, the whole let them eat cake, the aristocracy was eating sugar cakes because they had the money, because they were selling the sugar. It was one of the products that came as valuable as gold. Tobacco was the same thing, and it spread around the world, and they made money from tobacco plantations and selling tobacco to people around the world, right? Before tobacco spread, actually, that's something I was going to bring up. Is I broke with the last of my utility chillums, right? So, but pipes and bongs spread around the world with tobacco, and so I've got now this here was actually going to be pipe, and I mastered it up, so it's a little different. It's got some. But here's a little tube pipe chillum that's a replacement of the. You can't even see all the cool designs that come out from the rock. All right, here's another one. Trying to get them to where they're small enough to fit in the fingers and seal. But it's warm enough now where I can work in the evenings in the garage and start making more of these. So tobacco, sugar, and maize, corn spread around the world. But the corn syrup was an issue later on. Became, it got more corporatized and got bigger. But corporations and stuff that was occurring. There was like, so the East India Tea Company, if I'm not mistaken, that's right. So everyone talks about the Boston Tea Party, right? Well, tea is a food back in the day, and they literally put on the king allowed the parliament to add a tax onto the food, basically, which is already fairly well taxed, because that was like how the shipping companies are large corporations and they were capital interests that had banded together, and they were limited liability or no liability. They banded together and created this import company for tea export. And then, but that 2% tax was literally just a payment to the company. It wasn't even going to the crown. The crown approved it and shit. And that's where the Boston Tea Party went down. That was a food tax. Okay, so it was taxing the cost of living, not any luxuries. It wasn't taxing property. It wasn't tax, which other stuff really was the taxation of forestry. It was the true straw that broke the camel's back and brought us freedom, or what we keep fighting for against central banks, capital interests, and et cetera, would turn these sacred plants into a poison because they wanted to capitalize and profit, right? And so again, I keep skirting around the slave labor for working cane fields. And so like here in Utah, they have some of the first places where the Mormon church was trying to do something, get away from, or just the concept, people who had a moral mentality, mindset. We're trying to get away from subsidizing the trade, the slave labor that was still being used for producing sugar, and even cheap labor and whatnot in sugar plantations. And so they came up with the sugar beet, right? And then so corn syrup came out of that as well. So it's kind of this crazy, like, where's the spectrum of good and evil and bad, and this is just how things are, and we perceive it. But when we have diabetes, that seems pretty evil to us, right? And then when we're living off of these non-nutritious foods and we realize that doesn't seem very, and the food we eat causes us to go into there's a whole nother one. Was my daughter told me her mother is cancerous, and I'm going to be dealing with that kind of stuff too. Taxation is not theft. Taxation without representation is theft. Okay, and a trickle down misconception that comes from uber rich people who want more. They don't want to pay taxes, and they don't already. They write everything off. And the truth is, the higher the tax rate is, the more the worker earns, the more the worker takes home. Okay, inflation can be a tax, and the tax that we're seeing from inflation right now comes from Trump's attack on with tariffs that came back and bit us in the ass, right? And we had to freaking pay subsidies bigger to the corn producers and the soybean producers. Okay. So if you don't understand this stuff, it's really easy to just like chant the chants of the rich people who make you their tool. Okay. And the fact is that here we are in this country, and where does the cost of the military that's supposed to protect our capital interests come from? That doesn't just arise out of nowhere. Originally it came from tariffs, but all of a sudden it got to the point where there was equality in nations throughout production in the world as industry progressed, and other nations started putting tariffs on us. So we had to drop the tariffs. Okay. But we all had agreements on these tax levels, and all of a sudden somebody says, I'm going to start putting tariffs on shit, and it spirals the freaking economy out of control. Whether you have, when we kick all the workers out of the country and you don't have supply chain issues because there isn't enough labor, because all the cheap labor got exported or deported. There's this huge thing going on here. But if you just listen to the rich people who are telling you that own the corporations, the taxation is theft, and you're the one that's actually paying taxes, and they're already hardly paying taxes because they write it off and they keep getting massive tax breaks, right? That's the central bank. Central bank didn't freaking take any hit during the pandemic, all right? Think about that. That's why we all had to go back to work. That's why we couldn't have good things. That's why we don't have social payments. It's because the central bank needed to have its usury paid. Right back to where were we? kind of crazy. So I'm actually answering this question. I was wondering, is like, why do these sacred plants become poison? And that's it right there. Okay. The taxation of labor is theft. The taxation of property and profits is not theft. That's how we should be running our country, is and building the even playing field for everybody to have the opportunity to have that same success, right? And so those who have the greatest success have the greatest return on that investment and should be putting more investment into that return. Okay, but so when we have a 70% progressive tax rate, that sliding rate, the worker gets paid more because the company doesn't want to pay it in taxes. The worker gets a bonus at the end of the year because the company is looking at how am I getting rid of this tax burden. Okay, the other company that produces goods that this company uses ends up having more business because they're going to buy more and they have a higher quality and they'll have more stuff that they have as spillage and write off as lost product. There's going to be more R&D, and so researchers and scientists are going to be doing better. They're going to be amortizing off buildings and cars a lot faster, and they're going to be buying more company cars for people just to pay all of that as a cost of doing business instead of taxes. Nobody wants to pay the taxes, and they're going to get around it any which way they can. And when we cut taxes for the large corporations, but not the workers, as we can see, the price of labor does not get increased, but the ownership of the companies goes up. And that is the truth of the situation we're in today. Right? And so back when I'm talking about I was growing up in a warfare zone, nefarious government agents who are trying to make things happen and people get out of line and try and control the world, and we don't have freedom. Right? And it's the same kind of shit we're dealing with today. And we get manipulated on what we're told and the information. But Mark Webb was murdered for bringing the truth to the light on the CIA bringing cocaine into the country, right? You know, and we have these people who on one side of the war want to control everybody, and these people aren't necessarily Illuminati. They're just morally decrepit, mentally ill. A person with $1 billion to me is no different than a person who has the Sunday Times in the last 30 years stacked in triplicate through the halls and you can't walk to their house. They have a hoarding, they have a problem in mental capacity as to how to utilize. They have a fear problem that leads to a greed problem, that leads to a problem of disrespecting other humans and not following the golden rule. Okay. It's kind of interesting how there was guys I thought were going to be senators that I went to high school with, the private high school I went to, where we had to lay in the ditch to survive shootouts for rock cocaine dealership streets that butted into the high school. Okay. And I gave LSD to some of these kids thinking that like, we're going to have good senators instead of the children of depraved billionaires moving upwards to the ranks the way they do. And instead, these people become yogis and don't go into politics. And I failed in my mission that way because instead we have these people we have there now who grew up in the same age group as I did, that were into the same, they went to the public high schools instead of the private high schools. Kind of freaking, kind of nuts. Fishermen in chat. I grew up fishing. I got to wet a line. My very first job was on a fishing boat. If you haven't heard that story, we were actually boarded by in the mid 80s, we were boarded by the Coast Guard several times a week because of all the cocaine that was coming up primarily. But we were boarded and searched several times a week. And like when I was doing my first sacred medicine man work, providing rope to smoke for seasick landlubbers, we couldn't have a stem or a seed or a paper or a roach in the trash can on board because the Coast Guard would confiscate the entire boat if there was anything like that. So there's a whole different, that's actual theft, right? Yeah, Jaeger, taxation isn't theft. You go back and listen to what I just said. taxation without representation. And you don't have any representation, and you're just screaming the rich man's chorus and being their mental slave, right? And you're like, how do you pay for the fire station if taxation is theft? How do you pay for the police that protect you if taxation is theft? How do we pay for the teachers that teach our children? And yes, you can call it indoctrination, of course, if there's not enough money to pay a teacher that has a mind that can actually think, it becomes indoctrination, right? Or you can go, it's like all of these things. How do we get the stripes on the street if taxation is theft? Those are the things that protect you. It's not. It's an agreement. We have a society, okay? This is how we all get along, is there are certain things called infrastructure that we agree on, that this is all something that we need as a society to get along properly. Okay, but we have nefarious players who think they can bring profits to themselves without paying into the system that gives us all the ability to survive, get along, in pursuit of happiness and prosperity. Okay. And so here we have philanthropy seems to be dead. Yeah, Squishy Mirror. I don't see it anymore. Right? No, I'm fine paying taxes if the money goes to society as well. And that's where we've been duped, because we are not formed by the people. We are formed by the corporation, right? These people that are their Congress critters and senators, we are not their clients. They do not work for us, unfortunately, no matter how much. And there is not exactly the same left to right, but it's pretty damn close. And there is stuff that we see as major issues that divide us. But for the most part, it is the warbird with the left and the right wing, and it needs them both to fly. And it needs the profits of the corporations to keep them getting their rotating doors and their lobbying dollars and all that stuff, right? So tobacco lobby is one of the corn lobby is, these things are huge, right? And then Monsanto is your true owner. Okay, that is your government. Monsanto is your true owner, and the central bank. All right, so the taxes pay the central banks, right? So the central bank and its taxes, its usury is the theft. Okay, and taxation primarily pays the central bank interest on the loan that's made to our government. Okay. Think about this. The rich people keep telling you through the corporations that taxation is theft so that you'll bash heads against each other and divide and not look at where the real problem is. You know, the billionaire I used to ski with spent millions and millions of dollars in court to make sure he still paid $12 an hour to all of his thousands of employees in his rental hotels, condos empire, of which he owned thousands and thousands of units, right? I just took a job for the first time in 16 years when I swore I walked off that job 16 years ago. I would never work for a company again. At that time, I was able to charge $175 an hour for climbing trees, right? But I wasn't able to compete with the big corporations that could just underbid me on huge jobs because they had this flow, and I had to pay all my workers, okay? And through various things, like I had severe injuries that I can't get fixed because I don't have the freaking money to pay for it, and I had to quit climbing trees, so I don't make that kind of money anymore. Seeds don't pay me shit. I spend way more producing and reproducing seeds than I do earning. And so here I am back to that same job that I left 16 years ago. All right. And it's partially so I can take my daughter skiing. Right. That's why I had the job before, was because my daughter came along and she wants to ski and I don't have the money for buy the pass. So I go back and I ski, I work, and I earn a pass, and I get her a cheap pass, and I make some new friends. And they just raised the pay from 16 freaking years ago from what I was getting paid, $9 an hour at that job. They just raised it, and I got hired on at $15.50, right? That's the company. 16 years. Okay. It's a private company, and they're in profit zones constantly. It's a family-owned corporation. It's freaking nuts. And they have people there because the skiing is the best. And if you can't afford it because you're a working person, and these people are spending $100, $120, $150, you're spending $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 a freaking week to come and ski from around the country. There's a whole different. Now they just started charging $25 for people who don't have to come and ski. You have to park your car. They took over the entire public lands and state highway, and they bought all the property on the other side of the road. But they use Forest Service contract land where their resort exists. And now they say, because we own all the private property, you have to pay us to utilize the public road at $25 to park on weekends and holidays. It's fucking nuts. But that's the reality of it, right? So why is taxation theft when the rich people don't even fucking pay it? The richer you are, if you have land, if you have a farm, you know how to do it. You have a little small business, you're not paying any tax. It's the workers who pay the majority of our income. Right now, there's still larger volumes of money coming from the profits, yes, but us as the workers do pay the greatest volume of our compensation for the labor comes in, and so we're insane in this society, and we turn to addictions, eating addictions, smoking addictions. We're trying to fill this hole, right? Because we're being taxed on all levels. Today, I was looking at it. It's $24 an ounce spot for silver this morning. I'm looking at it. I'm thinking about striking some coins. Okay. I've prospected my whole life. I've got some beautiful ore. Let me grab this. This is cool. You'll love this. This is the best piece of ore I've ever found. I've picked up thousands of chunks of ore or quartz, right? Here's a piece of smoky quartz I picked up in below Pikes Peak one time, and this is a piece of stone I've done a little rock work on. I like to try and carve stone and have an understanding of that kind of stuff. But this is one I just saw a spot on the side of the mountain walking by, and I recognized I started digging in, and so this right here though, let's see if it'll show when I open it up. Yeah, that's silver ore. That's a super high grade galena. Let's see. Looks pretty gray in the video. You can see the shiny. So this stuff I've had assayed out other chunks of this. This one weighs it's a 10-pound chunk of lead and silver and a little bit of gold. And hopefully this summer I'm going to get back into hiking, and I'll be doing paradigm shifts where I'll show you guys geology and stuff, what makes soil become soil. So spot silver at $24 an ounce this morning. In 1962, minimum wage was 6 silver coins, and those 6 silver quarters today, that would come out to about that $24. That's about an ounce of silver in those 6 quarters, right? And so $24 an hour would be the equivalent of 1962's purchasing power as a minimum wage, right? So we've been getting thefted for working for quite some time, since we went into a fiat. And there's a huge different ways we can look at that buying power and whatnot, right? And how come we go and turn towards why we need soma of any form? We need if we have 3 incomes to survive in a household, right? And you don't even have time to deal with raising your children. Okay, you don't have the energy to cook for yourself, so you're eating processed foods. You can't even have the energy to be a spiritual being. You become this purely physical. Your mentality gets sucked into the boob tube, or whatever form of entertainment that you can come across, right? Or soma. And so we've made these slaves to pay the central bank through our working taxes, and we earn less and less and less. And the corporations are every year posting massive, record profits every quarter, right? Every once in a while we have a slow down, and part of that slowdown, that loss is a profit to the central bank. If bankruptcy is written into that whole program where loss becomes profit. Some people, one who we had to call president for 4 years, hasn't paid taxes in how long? Because he calls his losses a profit. We're finding out he manipulates other shit too, right? One of my best friends worked up in Yellowstone forever for this corporation that was a not-for-profit, and they had like 240 employees or something. And these rich people came in as philanthropists or whatnot, and they came in and took over the board of trustees and ended up spending all the freaking funds on like repaving their driveways and their mansions in California, and totally wiped out that entire not-for-profit that employed 100 or 224 people and taught thousands and thousands and thousands of people every year. Okay. This is the dichotomy of reality when it comes to, and some people actually get to where they're making that money, but how do you get, you have to block off your mental capacity to think. You have to shut off your morality and chase that idol of the almighty dollar, that God in which we trust, that's in our pocket. In which case, if we're spiritual beings and you're dealing in this reality, you're using a drug to deal with your day-to-day just like dichotomy, getting torn apart from physical to spiritual to physical, like, and you become this just true beast, right? All right, so I grew up, my dad working his ass off. He came from a very fucking poor family, right? My mother's side came from affluency, but she was crazy because her dad beat her because he was a drunk, because he was a war hero in World War II. He killed more human beings than we can fathom. He was a good Christian, good Catholic. That fucking tore his shit apart. He also come from a long line of Irish Catholic drunks. Why do the Irish drink? They work hard and they had a dismal fucking life, right? The same reason we turn to Soma today. The same reason we end up having, we have these traumas in our life. And yes, that can be very traumatic, living this dismal fucking life. Some people, that's their entire mental capacity and they need to be told what to do every day. And that's just it. We're not all like on the spectrum. There's this huge difference of people. And it's growing up, we had a kid who was autistic that would hang out with us. It was the brother of one of the kids in the household we hang out with. And we'd all be tripping on acid, smoking weed. He's like, I don't need to do that. I'm already there, guys. Right? So we become addicted, whether it's to eating food that we don't need, these calories to fill while we're watching TV, to fill the experiential shit that we don't got, right? And just shut our mind off. I know, like when I'm dealing with my spine issues, I still have this problem with an addiction of flipping through my phone and looking at videos, because I made myself lay on the floor and watch old VCR movies just to hold myself still. But I also was drinking alcohol to make myself sit still. You see, I have energy, right? Now that I'm not just sitting around waiting to die again, I'm actually skiing again. My energy starts to spiral up again, right? But my parents were tobacco addicts when I was born. I think my dad was smoking when I was in vitro. I don't know that my mother was, but for whatever reason, he smoked 2 to 3 packs of Kent a day. And Kent ended up being one of the gnarliest fucking poisoners of humans. And I'm surprised that he's not dead from lung cancer. He's had other cancer, and cancer is the best way to quit smoking. He had a melanoma on his leg, and that was his initiation to quit. And I agree with him. And that was the final wipe. I'd been trying for 6 years, and I finally quit. And I found this way that I'm going to teach you here. And you can apply this to any addiction. We can apply it to, and I probably ought to freaking get some tobacco and apply it to this damn phone, right? Because the shit works. But so particularly today, this is a lesson about being addicted to tobacco. And I want to make sure I got 20 minutes. I want to get this whole thing in here. So I'm going to go acutely over to tobacco addiction. And I wanted to bring up stuff like, I'm going to show the web browser here for a second. So there's tobacco, like I was saying, was the original sacred plant. It is a sacred plant, but when we become addicted to it, and we're smoking 5 packs a day or whatever it is, we know that it has carcinogens in it. Especially with these companies, they're trying to make you addicted. They were putting addictive chemicals into it. And like I said, the one my dad smoked, the Kent, was the worst. And I was in vitro smoking. I was 3 years old when I first picked up tobacco and stuck it in my mouth. My mother crushed out a cigarette, put me down for a nap, and I put that in my mouth and started puffing on it. Okay. And so by the time I was like 16, I was smoking multiple tobaccos a day. So we have tobacco shamanism in South America. Anthropologist Jonas Wilbert here presents a comprehensive ethnography of magico-religious, medicinal, and recreational tobacco use of Native American societies. Surveying nearly 300 societies, Wilbert has found that South American Indians employ numerous means of nicotine application, and that close functional relationship exists between tobacco and shamanism. And as I found reading in the Cosmic Serpent, that it was the original plant of teaching, and they learned about all the other cactus and vines from the tobacco. And so, I believe that it migrated north to North America as far as being used as a sacred plant, and the uses of it in North America are a lot less diverse, right? And so we say Se'ema, or tobacco, is one of the 4 sacred plants represented in the eastern direction in the mind. The Anishinaabe use a form of tobacco known as Kinnikinnick, or a red willow mix, because it opens the door to the creator. When the tobacco is used to make smoke, it is one of the most sacred plants for Native people. And so in the North America, you can see, and let's see if we can increase the size of the, you can't really see the flower too well, but it holds it has 4 of the colors: the yellow, the white, the red, and I think there's black in there. And that's the same colors of the medicine wheel for the Native Americans. Okay. So I'm going to go back here and bring me back up and show you. This is one of my medicine pouches, and it originally had an ermine tail on it, and it's worn off. Sacred bird. This was an adopted daughter of mine, and her mother had this made for me, bison skin, and I keep also another medicine pouch in here, and this has various sacred objects that came from different. So, I have a couple of different tobacco or sacred pouches, and I keep. This is a cigar that came from my uncle's wedding, and so it's just a sacred piece of tobacco I keep around, right? And so, again, I was pretty well addicted to tobacco when it came time for. I've been trying to quit for quite a long time. And I couldn't, for various reasons. I ran the inmate fire crew, and one of the things the guys would do to get on my leg, they talk, get on the leg is like the dog, get off the leg, stop humping them, stop, leave them. But so one of the ways they kissed my ass, whatever, was they would leave me a gift of tobacco and rollies, right? And so and that top, and I used the Durham in the bag, or the drum. Or the American Spirit, and that's what I was using at the end. And I was going through a pouch every couple of days, and it's pretty freaking intense. I just stunk my freaking lips, my fingers, everything was stained with tobacco. And not knowing about tobacco shamanism, it probably actually was enlightened through the excessive consumption of tobacco. There was a time where I was smoking 4 packs a day. I'd have a cigar in one hand and a chaw and a snooze all at freaking once, right? And a 40 ouncer between my legs, no less, while driving. And this stupid fucking kid. But it didn't. I'd surf, and I'd be in and out of the ocean. I'd smoke 5 packs in a day. And I'd smoking. And I tried so many times, so many ways. In firefighting, you just get bored as shit sometimes, standing on the fire line, and someone toss you a can of tobacco 100 yards down. And, it's like something to do while you're waiting for fire to back down the mountain for a fucking hour, so you could light the bottom strip and burn it out and have a black line, right? So it kept coming back around, and I'm not sure how I came up with all this understanding. It may have been the tobacco itself taught me. But the addiction of tobacco itself, and we can apply this to any other. It's not just the chemical itself, the nicotine, but there's a shit ton of dopamine release that occurs with the process of consuming that nicotine. Okay. And so I started learning about sacred tobacco at age 18 when I first went into a sweat lodge, right? And how we would place it beneath each of the poles of the sweat lodge, and we gave offerings to the directions. And I learned about these things and how giving an offering to the directions is a very powerful prayer, especially of gratitude. And gratitude is one of the most powerful emotions we can have, and a blessing is the other most powerful transfer of energy that we can manifest as human beings. Okay. And so it was literally a day we were hiking up the side of the mountain. It was actually the same day I got knocked out by hitting a tree, and I caused a small soft slab avalanche. And it was the third time out and I bitched at my buddies about the sign that says you can die going out of bounds here in dangerous terrain in Utah. And everyone had skied down the mountain, and we were 15 runs through, and I actually ended up setting off a soft slab avalanche. I came to the stop, and the last thing that happened was my head went thwap into a tree and knocked me out cold. And but hiking up, these kids were out hiking me, and I hike for a living as a firefighter and shit. And it's like, you know what? All right, I got to quit smoking. And so I made that determination, and it was going. I was sitting on the chairlift at 4:20 in the afternoon on it was solstice of 99, and I threw the cigarette and I lit a joint and said I'm never smoking tobacco again. And the process I came up with was understanding that there's little dopamine releases that are associated with tobacco. Alcohol is a whole other aspect I didn't even touch on, how they interact. And I'm going to hit this really quick. When I was in high school, chemistry professor showed us he made 2 glass lungs out of carboys. And they basically they got as dirtier than my bong, right? And from running a pack of Marlboro Reds through them with the filters snapped off, and had an electric pump that would suck the smoke through, pump it out, and so you take that, and he took every acid and every base in the laboratory and shook them in there, and nothing would put them into solution. You couldn't clean the inside, and put scrubbers in there and just goo, right? All that nicotine, all that tar, all that crap, right? Well, you put pure ethanol in there, drinking alcohol, shake it around, it goes straight into solution and cleans the glass off, just like a rubbing alcohol does to our tar in our pipes and bongs, right? But that was a revelation at that time, right? That it's like there's this weird dichotomy of the two of them. It goes directly into your bloodstream and exponentially increases that nicotine response in your system and the vascular constriction and all that kind of shit, right? And I don't know if you'll be able to see this shit. I have severe varicose vein issues, and when I was 18, I had my veins stripped out. I think this stuff all had to do with the tobacco I was consuming. So I had 28 incisions in one leg and 17 in the other, removed veins. Okay. Back to quitting. Hiking up, and I said, no, I can't do this no more. And so again, I cannot at the moment recall exactly how the process was that it came to me. I needed to do this, but I kept the tobacco with me. And so these different things that go into actually being addicted to tobacco, it's not, again, not just the chemistry of the nicotine, but truly going to the store and buying your pack or your carton. The ritual, that's a dopamine release. Buying your pack and smacking it on your hand, right? Pulling that one out, the way you unwrap it and you pull your Lucky out and flip it over. All these little rituals that we have involved with a cigarette, the bumming of the cigarette, the giving of the bum cigarette, all these little rituals that come along with, these are all little dopamine releases. Okay. And so to compensate that, and I realized later also that I was inducing a microdose. I explained it in totally different terms, so that's the shortest, easiest way to do it. So if you keep that pouch of tobacco with you, get yourself that American Spirit, that good, clean, natural, organic tobacco that's grown with the 7th generation in mind, right? And every time you have the urge, every time that urge for a smoke comes upon you, you take your tobacco and you give a gratitude, thankful blessing to the earth in each of the directions. You take a little teeny pinch and you say your little prayer. And by doing this, you'll have replaced your rituals. You can still go buy your tobacco, right? Eventually you won't need to. Or you will keep it around as a sacred plant. All right. And I'm looking now at this point to reintroduce it as a sacred plant for myself. But in 21 days of doing that, you'll get to a point where smelling tobacco smoke will make you repulse. And I literally got to a point where I would start dry heaving around this stuff. Okay. So, and one time, unfortunately, somebody, I met these Europeans in California. I was back for a visit, and these guys showed me this incredible dank, old school, close to what we would call a late 80s, early 90s skunk. And this was probably 96 or 97. Just a nice old school nugget of the dank. And showed me a chill. I'm like, oh, yeah, I know how to use a chill. I'm sure. Excuse me. They packed that thing up and handed it to me. And I had no fucking clue they stuffed it full of tobacco and put a little bit of weed on top of it. So I took the biggest fucking hit off that chillum, and I almost died from the tobacco because I hadn't been smoking, I guess, like 3 years at that point. I guess that was early 2000s. Anyhow, touching the tobacco, smelling it when you pull it out, all that stuff, it tricks your brain. And that's how I used to say it just tricks your brain into thinking you've had your dose of nicotine, right? But you're probably getting a microdose through your skins and just smelling that, right? And we all know what a microdose is highly effective at doing things as we progress through time here. Yeah, I did crazy shit. I used to take a big old bong like that one and take an entire cigarette in one hit. Right. And usually it was a Marlboro Light with the filter off, but somebody snuck me a Marlboro Red one time and coming on to a hit of acid and ended up just throwing up for fucking projectile style. Anyhow, I think we can use this concept and keeping that sacred plant with us to give thanks and praise and blessings and gratitude to each of the directions for any time you have something you want to deal with. And I'm actually going to start working on that. I'm going to go get myself a pouch tobacco and see if I can't apply this to the time I still waste on my phone and not getting shit done. I'm pretty sure I got that out. Right, we're replacing the ritual buying. We're replacing all the rituals of packing. We get that microdose in our nose. We get, and then the most powerful energy we can do is to give blessings and gratitude and thanks. Okay, and turn in each of the directions. We've replaced our ritual, and I think you can do this if you've got a food addiction or eating disorder, right? And you want to go purge or overeat. I think we could do this. If you have an anger issue, think of your tobacco and pull it out and give thanks, right? Calm down, give yourself the 10 seconds or whatever it is. Yeah, that's pretty much the what for not that I wanted. I think we hit. I think I answered my own question I wanted to ask about how does this stuff become a poison, and why do we live? Why it's this massive cycle of greed and fear that turns what people of the earth, people who live a sustenance life, who I mean, nice things are nice. Don't get me wrong. I love all the good things of the earth, but when we think about the bigger spectrum of reality and what having the nicest things causes and effects in the long run there's a lot of us and there's a lot of other things that aren't us, and all of those things have as much right to be as we do or are. And these are the things that I think about when I go about doing things. was thinking about the billionaire friend I know of mine, and like how many things he does that make him money that I could never do, just because of the more. And he keeps in his office an original etching of Rembrandt of John the Baptist being beheaded, or the moment after where his head's held up or on a platter. That he wants to remember that he's not the most powerful, but we are human beings, are we not? And it is by far more difficult to pass through the night gate called the Eye of the Needle by a loaded camel than it is for a rich man to pass through those allegoric pearly gates, stand before the golden throne, right? So you may look for, let's see, don't wave. I wish I could sing a little Tosh right now for you. What is life worth? You can find yours right here on earth. Oh, I'm losing my mind. Oh, wait, no, I lost it a long time ago. Anyhow, cool, we're coming into the close of this. I'm going to burn a little bit of sage because I don't have tobacco to offer. I know Peter's growing rustic tobacco in hopes of getting some seed to pass around, I think. There's various wild tobaccos. That's one I didn't mention. So I think it was at 90 tobaccos around the world. There's 12 of them, I think it said, that don't, maybe 20 that don't live in the Americas. And then there's only 12 species of tobacco that have alkaloid effects on human body. Yeah, and the what is the straight and narrow is, like I said, the dichotomy of the circle, the roundabout, corn syrup coming from, like sugar beets coming from wanting to not be employing slave labor through sugar. Well, sugar is a drug in itself, and man, it's where is good and where is evil lie, and where is our perception deceive us as to what is good and what is bad. It's kind of crazy. A little more of that's California's chaparral, white sage, sweet white sage, and I collect this stuff myself when I go out, and it's a sacred plant, and it drives off evil spirits and bad ghosts. And I think I've mentioned before that smudging, they found scientifically that smudges literally are antibacterial and kill the bugs and stuff in our air. Anyhow, coming to the end here. Appreciate y'all. Hope you understood what it was I had to say. I hope this can help you or someone you love move forward in your life. Just the money alone. How much does a freaking pack cost these days? See y'all on the next one. I think it's going to be Sundays. I think I'm working Wednesdays. Peace out.